Hey,
Hi there.
hey, how you doing? I'm sorry.
Let's see. I didn't know it was recording already. I'm gonna.
And we're now recording. And what I want to talk about is the things that you need to have, you absolutely need to have before you pitch an agent or an acquisitions editor from a publishing company. And acquisitions editor, by the way, that's a real title and it's a real person. And they're the ones who are responsible for finding books, bringing them in, presenting them to the rest of the publishing house, who then makes the decision on what they're going to do and what they're not going to do. Not included in the 4 items you want to have, but let me just say this: never pitch an agent or a publisher unless your manuscript is finished and ready to ship out. That means it's been finished, it's been professionally edited, it is where you want it to be. Then you can pitch them, because the worst thing you can do is pitch them and they get interested and say, okay, I'll have it for you in 9 months after I write it. And they'll remember you. I mean, they get so many, getting their attention is so difficult that if somebody says, yes, I'm interested, you want to be able to strike while the iron is hot. But as I said in the promotion for this, and Sherry was noticing it, there were things that you need to have is a selling biography, a narrative outline, chapter samples. Of course, if you get the whole book done, then you got that, and a book proposal, which is basically a marketing tool. It tells you what market the book can go to, what are the comparable books out there. So when I was talking about, the Dresden Files, those are like the class in that category. And you want to say, this is a book published in the in the same market space, and here's why it'll succeed. There is a book out by Michael Larson on writing a book proposal. Michael Larson is a literary agent in San Francisco, and he's written 2 books. One was How to Be Your Own Literary Agent, and the other was how to write a book proposal. And when I was a literary agent, I used earlier editions of these books. They were on my desk. I had them handy all the time because they were so practical and pragmatic and so useful that I definitely wanted to have them there. Sherry?
Okay, the book proposal is for nonfiction, right?
Book proposals is fiction or nonfiction. They're different. They have different styles, but you can do a book proposal for fiction too. And as I said, Michael Larson, now his book, the one I'm recommending, is I think in its 5th edition. And if you'll hang on just a minute, I'm going to go to Amazon and get a link for everybody that's interested in this. Okay, yeah, all right. There's, as I said, there are several editions. The one you want to get, if you want to get this book, is was published in September of 2017. It's I think it's 5th edition, and it is a co-author of Jody Rain and Michael Larson. But Larson's the one who's wrote the first 4 all by himself. Really can't recommend it enough. I have probably 3 of the 5 editions still. I've given them away before to people who I thought would want them. But I just posted the link on the chat, and that's something that you'll want to be able to refer to. And anything that you want to do in what I'm talking about today, you go to that book and you'll find more information about it. On the selling bio, I'm going to talk about that briefly, but next month in this time slot, I'm going to do an entire presentation on the selling bio and how to go about creating it. But I thought it would be better to talk about it now in the context of these other items so you can see how a whole pitch kit is put together. The selling bio it's a narrative, it's not an outline, it's not a resume or a CV, and it only focuses on those things that are relevant to you as the author of the book that you're proposing. It's the kind of thing that might be boiled down into a paragraph on the back page or back cover of your book, about the author. It's, you don't want to know, we don't want to know where you're going to school unless your academic accomplishments inform your writing. And that people do that. So, if that's what you want, then you can do that. But otherwise don't. Awards that you've won, they should only be the book awards that this or a previous book in the same genre has won for you. I've won many awards in a career in marketing and public relations, but none of them are relevant to anything I'm writing today. So I don't mention that I have those awards because it wouldn't do me any good. You want to focus on the things that are about you that will make people want to read this book. And give you an example. I'm in the process of rewriting to republish a book that my late wife and I wrote in about 17, 18 years ago. It was published and was in print for about 10 years, and then the rights reverted back to me. She'd already passed by that time. Anyway, I think it needs to be spruced up. It's a UFO story. It's based on a real UFO encounter that occurred in Kelly, Kentucky in 1955. My late wife, one of her cousins, actually was one of the 26 people who were involved in this sighting. Basically, they were having a multi-family barbecue cookout at a farm out in the country, and an alien ship came down and herded everybody into the house and kept them there for 26 hours. And these being Kentucky farmers, they had guns and they shot the aliens, who managed to not get hurt. I mean, they shot one of them off the roof and he fell to the ground, and then he hopped up and he went on. And they looked like nothing like the gray aliens or any of the other aliens you've heard about. And then the Army came in and at the end of this, it was near Fort Campbell, Kentucky. They came in, forced the family off the land, and took everything, including the topsoil, down to 18 inches that might have been in contact with these aliens, and nobody knows what they did with it. At least nobody has gone public with what they did. I mean, obviously the people who took it knew what they were doing, but it's never gone public. But knowing that there are all these factual things, when I'm talking about it, I would say, okay, I used to be a reporting correspondent for UFO magazine. I had a book published as serialized in UFO Library Journal, and through family ties, I had direct access to information about this incident. So those are things that people would say, oh, okay, he knows about UFOs, he knows about this thing, so this could be, as a novel, it should be a good read. That's my hope. I'm not going to tell them about the other 38 books that I've written that are published that have nothing to do with UFOs, because there's nothing there for it. So that's what I mean. You want to focus in on your selling bio. Another thing, and this is something that applies to everything you write on this, but especially here in the bio, you do not want to talk about your features, in other words, your accomplishments, so much as the benefits you offer to the readers. What gives you a specific insight into the story that you're telling? That is terribly important, because it's what the reader is going to say, okay, I want to know about this life. I want to know about these people. This is the author who can do this for me. Sherry has finished a book, and I guess that's the one you're getting ready to shop, Sherry. It's about a king in an African tribal area in the 1950s and 1960s, who had pretty much left the old ways. He'd gone to Oxford, and he was going to, I don't know, he was in school in the West Coast of the United States. He had been offered a professorship somewhere. He was going to make his career as academic. Then his father died, and he had to go home and become king, and changed his life completely. And it's a fascinating story about a part of the world during the colonial period, but the colonial leaders were not very present then. I mean, it was part of the background, but these people tended to live off in the country on their own. And, there are things about Sherry's career and her life that make her ideally suited to presenting this story. And if you read the story, you'll understand that, because only somebody who's really delved into that would be able to do this. But, those are things that she would want to have in her selling bio. And each of you, when you're thinking about it, in fact, if you're like some of us who write different kinds of books, like I've written 3 published science fiction books, and I'm getting ready to finish the 4th one this year. But the current book I'm writing is basically social commentary in the form of a diary about one person's perception on what's going on with COVID and how screwed up everything is. And what I do is I start off saying I was doing this as a writer's journal. I wanted to see what I did in a year in the life of a writer. Maybe I could learn some lessons from it for myself. So that's why I had started it officially. And then a few months later, COVID comes along, and suddenly everything else takes second place to that. And that's what I talk about. I worked in healthcare for 25 years. So I would say I worked in healthcare for 25 years. I was involved in public health. I understand what's involved. I ran, major vaccination, immunization programs at hospitals that I worked with, stuff like that. So I have the credibility to talk about this. And so I will. What each of you have to look at yourself and at the book you're writing and say, here's my biography for this. If you write a different kind of book, then you want to have a different kind of bio. Like I would have a very different bio from the Kelly incident, 1955 in rural Kentucky, and the COVID diaries set in today's time primarily in Las Vegas. 2 very different worlds, 2 very different times in the world. And yet both of them I have direct inside links to it. So my biographies will be very different, but they will address what will make the reader want to read it, because I know something about it. A good friend of some of ours here, Lauren Tallman, she writes erotica, and she's just finished a remarkable book set in, I think it was 13th or 14th century China, about a eunuch who becomes the head of the harem for the emperor, and is responsible for training the girls to make the emperor happy. It's a very interesting book. Her previous book was How to Have an Affair Without Getting Caught. And so that, I mean, that means, okay, she's into the field now. Her answer for having an affair without getting caught is to have an affair with your significant other. In other words, you turn a mundane relationship into an exciting sexually charged relationship just by treating people differently. But anyway, she's got that, so she mentions that in the bio. Go to that one. If she wrote a different book that had nothing to do with erotica, she wouldn't mention those two because she's written other things as well. Anyway, that's pretty much what you want to focus in on. A selling biography should be no more than a page or two, double spaced. One page is better than two, double spaced, Times New Roman 12 point with 1-inch margins. That's a standard page for publishing purposes. And if it's longer than that, you probably need to pare it down because you're telling people more than they're going to want to absorb. So that's the selling bio. And as I said, I'll go into details on it next month. But it's something that you should all be thinking about.
I had a question
Sure, go ahead.
about the bio and a query letter.
Yeah.
How much of the same information would go into both as far as your personal information and the story?
The query letter
itself?
is going to be very much shorter than the bio. The query letter should be about 3 paragraphs long. And it should say, I wrote this book. This book has a great audience base because people care about this subject matter. I have lived it. My life experience has prepared me for this book. You know, buy my book or I shoot your dog. You know, basically.
So that's more on a personal level as opposed to the book itself, the information on the book itself.
Right. But the proposal letter is a business letter. It should be no more than 3 or 4 short paragraphs, making 3 or 4 key points. It's an excellent question, Elizabeth. Thank you. And, you know, basically in the cover letter, you want to sell not the book, but the excitement from the book. In advertising, there's an old slogan that's very true. It says, you don't sell the steak, you sell the sizzle. When people see on TV a steak sizzling and they can almost smell the aroma of the meat cooking and they hear it popping and all that kind of stuff, it engages their emotions in a way that makes them salivate and feel hungry and they want it. They see a piece of meat, it's a piece of meat, but they hear that and it engages more than just their vision. It engages more of their senses. That's what you want to do. You know, you've got a great book, you got a great story, you really want to tell it, you know, and you're the right person to do it. You want to, that first sentence, that first paragraph has got to catch them and hold them. Now, typically nowadays, a cover letter is sent as an email. So what you have to do is come up with a great email subject line. And the first paragraph has just got to be jumping off the page. Because if they don't like the first paragraph, they're not going to read the second. And you really want to keep it short because you want them to turn the page. And turning the page will get to the bio and to the narrative outline and things like that. So, does that answer your question? Okay, go ahead.
I have a question.
Sure.
You were saying the font, as far as the font, everything like that, Times New Roman. I've been seeing a lot more of, especially with publishing of different publications and everything like that. At Courier, they're also accepting Courier 12 because it's a slightly bigger font, so people can see it without wearing their, reading glasses, because some people are vain like that.
Yes.
So that is
now
I'm seeing correct.
Okay, no, that's a great question, Val, and let me explain it. When you're dealing with the business side of it, with publishers and agents and stuff like that, the industry standard for measuring the size is Times New Roman 12 point double spaced inch margins all around. That gives them a size, so they know that if you got 150 pages like that, you're going to have a 125 page book or whatever, depending on the format. What you want to have it published in, you like Comic Sound, don't you, or something like that? I know my wife does.
Courier.
You're going like, yeah.
No, it's Courier New.
Curio New, I know, but you've used some unusual fonts in your books. And
I don't have, when my books come out in print, I don't know what that font is. All I know is the font I synced it in.
okay, all right.
What they come out
But
printed
okay.
as.
Yes, okay, so, but what I'm saying is these are two very different things. One is for standard measurement purposes. Like editors, if you're gonna hire an editor, they often charge by the page. And they don't want to know the word count, they want to know the page count. And they say, if you format it this way, then that's what I do. I've had people send in things formatted in totally different ways. And before I could give them a price quote, I had to go back and reformat it, just so I would know how many pages were involved. So I could say, okay, based on that, this is what's involved. It's a simple thing, but that's what you use for measuring in the industry. When it's printed, the publisher will choose the font. They may ask your opinion, they may not. Just like the cover, they may ask your opinion, they may not. But if you're self-publishing, you can do it all the way you want. If you're not, then they're going to choose it. And they'll have reasons for it. And, you know, it's like we've been doing this for a long time, so this is how it works for us. So that's what you do. Okay, but they still want it in Times New Roman, double space, you know.
Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, that's just for having the standard document that you give to somebody. Then they know. You know, in fact, you can tell them, you know, if you're talking to publishers, acquisition editors, say, look, it's 192 pages. It's Times New Roman 12, double spaced with 1-inch margins, and she'll know immediately exactly what you mean when you're saying 192 pages. She immediately has it in her head what that means. Then you say, I would like to see it published in bold Gothic, and you know why. But anyway, I mean, you could say that, and they'll say, well, thank you very much, but we reserve the right to choose that ourselves. We have people who know what they're doing. You know, you just write the books, we'll take care of the rest. Okay, let's see. There's a couple of comments here, and okay, yeah, Haji asked. Repeat the question. And then Sherry answered, it's just about Times New Roman being the gold standard for the metrics of it, not for the, you know, set it in another typeface if you want, but not to have somebody evaluate it. Okay. Any other questions before I move on to the next area? Okay. All right, then let's talk about the narrative outline. This is really important to have. And a lot of people get confused because they hear outline and they think about what they learned in 11th grade English grammar class and how to outline a sentence, or what they learned studying science in college where you had to do, you know, had to outline a thesis paper or something like that. No, forget that. The narrative outline is you telling somebody the story of your book from beginning to end, without quotes and dialogue, and you know, without trying to set the scenes, but think of it as you're talking to somebody who is a friend of yours, who cares about you and wants to know what your book's about. And now some people will tell you, or they told me a lot of times, well, I don't want to give away how it ends because I want them to read it to the end and be surprised. And I said, no, this is your publisher. This is not your reader. Sherry?
Is synopsis another word for narrative outline, or are they two different things?
No, synopsis and narrative outline, they're used pretty similarly.
Okay.
I specifically say narrative outline because I think it's a little more storytelling-ish than a synopsis. A synopsis is often boiled down to the bare minimum. And you could do a synopsis of your book in a half page. It wouldn't do the book justice, but it would be a very legitimate summary. I would say a narrative outline of your book might write, you know, based on how I read it, would be 8 or 10 pages would be a good narrative outline.
Can I ask a follow-up?
Absolutely.
Okay, so what if they say they want a 1-page synopsis, which some agents will request? Most of the time they don't request any. Some of them will request a 2-page synopsis. So what's the strategy, or like I don't know, maybe I'm splitting hairs here, but like, what's the difference in like a 1 versus a 2 page? What do you put in one versus the other?
Okay, well, in a 1 or 2 page synopsis, you're pretty much dealing with 3 things. And that's the first act, the second act, and the third act. And
Okay.
the first act is the first, this is something that's pulled out of a movie, but it works for books as well. First act is the setup, the introduction, leads you up to the first crisis. The second act is the longest part of the book, and it deals with the crisis. It's the, you got the dark night of the soul and all those kinds of things. And then the last section is about the length of the introduction, and it's the resolution and the denouement. And you just tell it in that kind of format. You have to be, if you've got to boil it down to a page or two, you can't tell everything. You just have to tell the important things that carry the main story forward, so that people will say, oh, I understand where you're going with this. I like the narrative outline because it has enough space in it to be a story that's told to somebody. And, if you visualize that some person you want to talk to, and then you're just telling to them, and you write that down, that would pretty much cover it. Now, for those who want to understand about the steps or the beats in a novel, I would suggest that you get Save the Cat Writes a Novel by, her name is Brody, isn't it? Something. Save the Cat Writes a Novel.
That's Blake. Hold on a second.
No, Blake is Blake is the Blake is the one who did it for the screenplays. Somebody else did it for the novels.
Hold on. Jessica Brody.
Yeah, Jessica Brody. Her book, it's available at Barnes and Noble.
It's everywhere.
Yeah, it's everywhere. It's at Barnes and Noble, since Bob's our go-to guy here, and he's our expert at Barnes and Noble. So get it from them. You can get Michael Iverson's book from them too. I don't know if they have it on the shelf, but it's in print, and they can get it for you. Or you can get it on Amazon. Anyway, with a narrative outline, where you're basically telling the story that the book has, but without the dialogue and the scenes and everything, that gives you a really good selling tool. Because if you truly picture that you're speaking to somebody, some single person, and then you're sharing it just like you 2 friends talking, and you're sitting down in a coffee shop, and one said, "What are you doing?" And so, "I'm writing this new novel, and here's the story." Then you've got something good. I find that very useful. And I say this having been a literary agent for 10 years, and I found that a good narrative outline was very, very helpful to me. Any other questions about narrative outlines? Okay, we can come back to it later if you have a question later.
Why
Yeah.
some agents will ask for that and other agents won't? Like, when they ask for it, what are they looking for?
Well, a lot of agents who ask for a 1 page are just in a hurry to say no or yes. And, so they just want to get a sense of it, so that when they make a decision, they can say, I know what this book is about. And quite honestly, most agents and most publishers, acquisition editors, are not looking to say yes, they're looking to say no. If they get 100 manuscripts or 100 pitches a day, and they figure they might accept 1 a week, that means that they've got 499 to say no to. And so they're looking for something that will help them say no. And for instance, if you're doing a metaphysical murder, and you're getting somebody who, like John Wiley and Associates, who publish business books, they're going to see that and say, this isn't for us, and we'll move on. But you want to give them a reason to want it. If assuming you've done your shopping well, and this agent or this acquisitions editor wants your kind of book, then you want to tell them the story. And if they say 1 page or 2 page, give it to them. By the way, anything they say that they want, give it to them. I can't tell you how many times I said, I want 3 sample chapters, so beginning, middle, and end chapter. And people would send me the whole manuscript and say, I know you're going to love this book, so here, let me just send you the whole manuscript so that you've got it. Now, this was the day before email. So this means somebody was packing it up and shipping it and paying postage to get it to me. And anybody that sent me the whole book, they were automatically rejected. And the reason is I wanted to work with clients who were responsive to what I requested, because they need to be responsive to what the publisher asked for. So I wanted to get them in the habit of being responsive to requests. When they think they know better than me, they don't. I may not be the world's greatest agent, but I was my agent, and I got people published, and I knew what I wanted to do that. So you give them what they want. If they say a 1-page synopsis, you give them 1 page. You say they want a 1 or 2 page synopsis, I wouldn't give them more than 1.5. You know, just don't exceed. You don't get exceeding expectations in that. Now, as I said at the outset, you want to have the whole book finished before you start pitching it, because if they do say I want to see the whole thing, then you got to be able to do that right away. But as far as chapter samples, you know, say I've attached a file that has 3 chapters in it, one from the beginning, one from the middle, and one from the end, to show you that my writing style and how this sounds. I can provide you the whole book. It's completed. It's ready to go. It's been professionally edited. But here's what I'm giving you right now. That's the easiest thing to do, because you got the chapters done. You've done it. You know, when you're ready to go meet these people, you've had it edited. You've gotten it in final form. You've proofread it. You've gotten friends to give it a final look. You've had beta readers look at it. You can obsess with this, but you want to have it the best you can, understanding that perfection is the enemy of good enough. You want it to be good enough. And by that, I mean, hey, it's good enough to get, they'll buy the book based on that material. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be good enough. So, but strive for that. So
Ned, on those chapters, the
Yeah.
beginning, middle, and end, would the sceneries be different in the characters in those chapters, or do you want the same pretty much format of the story going through all 3 chapters of the beginning, middle, and end?
when I was looking for it, I wanted to, I mean, lots of people can write a great introduction. You know, there are books out there on how to write the first 5 pages, because that's what hooks people in. I want to see how they do it the last 5 pages, and how they deal with the middle, which is the kind of the down period, you know, where everything's piling up on the hero or heroine, and they're just like, you know, overwhelmed, and they haven't pulled out of this. You know, it's some people call it the dark night of the soul part of the book. I want to see how they handle that. I want to see how they hook people in immediately with the introduction, and how they close it out. And I treat them as 3 independent like short stories. I'm not reading for continuity. I'm saying, can you write in each of these? Other people just say, send me the first 3 chapters, and that's fine. You send them the first 3 chapters. They just want to make sure that you can write more than 3 chapters, or more than 1 chapter, because there's an awful lot of people who've written a great first chapter and never get any farther. And then the publisher says, yeah, can you have it to me by Tuesday? And they go out and, you know, jump off a bridge or something. But that's just, no, you want to, I prefer beginning, middle, and end for the reason I just mentioned. They're different parts of, now I'm talking about fiction here, but there are different parts of the book that deal with things differently. And I want to see how each one of them does it. And to get that, to understand that better, that Jessica Brody's book, Save the Cat, writes a novel, breaks it down actually into like 15 parts, but they're clustered in the beginning, the middle, and the end. And then breaks down the in-between parts, and uses excellent examples. It's a very practical book. The first copy I bought, it became one of the 2 most dog-eared, highlighted, marginally notated books I had. And then I gave it away. I'm not sure, I gave it to Valerie maybe, but maybe, no, somebody else. Okay, I told her to get the book, but I'd already given it away. And I bought it again, and I'm now on my third copy because it's, if I'm meeting with somebody and I say, this is what you need right here. So I do it. That will give you an understanding of the structure. It basically parallels Joseph Campbell's The Hero's Journey, which is what made Star Wars, the first Star Wars movie, so effective, because it followed all the standard beats of the standard epic story that man had from pre-literate days. This is no different than Homer sitting around a campfire at night telling the story from memory of the Iliad or the Odyssey. And that's, storytelling hasn't evolved since then. We're using computers now and we have different typefaces and all this kind of stuff, but you can learn more from reading Homer about how to write some story now, especially the Odyssey. Iliad was kind of so episodic, it's kind of hard to follow, but the Odyssey is just a story, beginning, middle, and end. And the trip home is the middle. It's like, oh my gosh, how will I ever get past, that barrier and that barrier, and all my crews died and all this kind of stuff. Then he gets home and finds out that his wife is being courted, and he has to find out if she's been faithful, she had, and then win her back and stuff like that. It's a classic story, and Joseph Campbell points to it a lot. Gilgamesh is another very early, maybe the first epic poem in human history, and it's the hero's journey. I read it, and it's a completely different world even than the ancient Greeks. I mean, this was like very strange world.
Babylon, yeah, I have that book. It's so good.
Yeah. Anyway, but there it is. So you want to. That's what Save the Cat Writes a Novel is about. By the way, just so you know, Save the Cat was the guy who originally wrote for screenplays, and it's become like the Bible of screenwriters now. And if you have a lead character who's a particularly disgusting anti-hero kind of thing, and if you want to see that, go see the movie Payback. Mel Gibson, he plays a criminal who just wants what owed him. He doesn't. People try to give him more than he's asked for, and he says, "No, I just want what you took $70,000 from me. I want my money back. That's it." And he winds up killing off the entire mob because of that. Anyway, but what you need to do at the beginning, you have to show the character doing something human. So this guy's getting ready to rob a bank, but he sees this cat up in a tree, goes up in the tree, brings the cat down. So you say, okay, he may be a bank robber and a murderer, but he saved the cat, so he can't be all bad. So that's the in a nutshell, that ceases. It's just a clever title, but it's also useful in some things. But look at that book as far as the breakdown of the structure of your novel, if you're writing a novel. None of this applies to nonfiction. Nonfiction, you're going to tell a very different kind of narrative outline, but you're still going to tell the story of your book. You just have to imagine that you're talking to, a targeted reader who may be an up and coming business exec, and you tell them what the book's about. And, you don't go into too much detail because he just wants to know what the book's about. He doesn't want you to read the book to him, just what the book's about. And that will help a lot. Okay, chapter sample. I think we've talked about that pretty much. There's not a lot to say there. You want to have a couple of sample chapters available. They will ask for 1, 2, or 3 chapters typically, or they'll ask for the whole book, one or the other. And most people will ask for either 1 chapter or 3, in my experience. So you want to be sure it's done. Now let's talk about the book proposal. And this is where Michael Larson's book comes in. And as I mentioned, I posted that in the chat. Sherry, yes?
Yeah, I've been having a lot of people that I've submitted to ask me for 20 pages. So I don't know if that's a trend these days, or just these particular people that I'm submitting to wanted that many pages, but that seems to be a pattern that I've experienced. So just, I don't know, for whatever that's worth, I just thought that was interesting.
Well, that's good. Let me tell you why I think that might be the case now, is that a number of very successful authors have gotten away from the chapter structure. they tell the story from beginning to end, and they don't really have chapters in there. A book I mentioned in previous programs here, The Martian, which is an excellent science fiction book. It doesn't have so much chapters as it's almost like he's talking through a diary. I mean, he's talking to the reader. He's not talking to himself. He's talking to the reader. It's like he's telling them a story in sequence as you would in a journal or a diary or something like that. And there's not really chapters. And so 20 pages will show, okay, how do you get people hooked? And then how do you transition away from the hook? And that gives them a good idea of how you're doing it. And I guess if I was talking to somebody who had written a fiction book that didn't have the traditional chapter structure, I would have asked for something like that too. When I was an agent, that really didn't come up much. It was a much more conventional time. But anyway, does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Yeah. Whatever an agent or a publisher asks for, you give them, but I think that's the reason for it, is they're seeing too many, especially literary novels, that don't have the traditional chapter structure. And they want to have an idea for how does the writer handle it without chapters. So, and some people write chapters that are longer than 20 pages. And I've been known to do that. And they may only want 20 pages to see how they write. But I'm finding it, for instance, very liberating right now. The book that I'm writing has no chapters. I have a few sections, which is, before the beginning, which is the COVID virus before anybody knew it was there. And then it was the beginning, and then basically today, what's going on today. So all the listings, it's just like a diary. All the listings are there, and that helps a lot. So anyway, the most important thing you can do is always, whatever they ask for, you give them exactly what they're asking for. And if they say, I want to see 3 chapters, don't think they want to see the whole book, send them 3 chapters. If they want to see 20 pages, don't send them 21. And when you're sending it off, if they're saying a page count, you definitely want to use the Times New Roman 12 point, as I discussed, because that's the standard for them evaluating pages. You can say in a cover note or a post-it note or something, I really wanted to put this in Courier 14, but I wanted to give it to you as you would expect it, which is 12 point Times New Roman. Okay, let's now talk about the book proposal. And I mean, a real book proposal will have all of these elements in it plus more. But I want to talk about the part that's most critical, is the marketing part, because about the author is covered in the selling bio. They know who you are. The narrative outline kind of tells them what's going on. You throw in a couple of sample chapters. What they're really looking at is what's the market for this and what makes a difference. And when I was a literary agent, there was a book that I was asked to represent, and I did. And it was a book on, well, the title was Play Smart and Win. It's how to win at casino gaming. And the author was a regular columnist for Casino Magazine. I didn't even know it existed, but it was there. And so he had credentials. He had been born in Czechoslovakia, and he had not heard English spoken until he was 18. His English read like Al Gore spoke, very wooden, very uninflected. And my wife and I literally rewrote it line by line, the whole book, because it needed to be more colloquial English. But it was all his information, we just cleaned it up. But what I wanted to do to get the publishers interested, and I sold this book to Simon & Schuster for a $10,000 advance, so this was successful. I went to, this was pretty much before the internet, so I went to Walden Books. Y'all remember Walden Books, right? Mm-hmm. They used to have a place there at Maryland Parkway, Flamingo, where Jason's Deli is now. But I went there, and I went to the books on gambling, and I just kind of sat down in the store and I looked at each one of them and their copyright date and all that. And there were 23 books in the market that were the competition. And I'm going to assume that a Walden Books in Las Vegas is going to have all the important gambling books because that's our industry here. And 23 books. The average age for the book was 11 years old, which says that these books are good, steady, mid-list books that keep performing year after year. Publishers want to know that because for this kind of book, you know, the first publication is not going to do it. Okay, Grace, thank you for joining us. Sorry you couldn't stick around. Okay, so I looked at it and I said, first of all, there's 23 books that are competition. Average age is 11. There hadn't been a new book in 6 or 7 years. So the market was ready for an updated book. This book, for instance, was the first one published that I'm aware of that talked about Pai Gow poker. And at the time I was representing the book, I had never even heard of Pai Gow poker. I didn't know what it was. I still don't, but whenever my son comes to Vegas, he plays Pai Gow poker, and he's always won the entire cost of the trip for him and his wife to come out. So it must be a good game for some people. Anyway, so I was able to tell them that this is a strong book that's going to have a long tail to it. It's going to be mid-listed for years, and you're going to keep selling them. And I sent out 5 very short query letters, and the first one who responded was from Simon & Schuster, and they wound up offering my author $10,000 advance. And you know, I said, hey, that's great, and we did it. We got that sold. So that was like what I wanted to get across to him was what's the market. So for paranormal mystery, what you want to do is find some information in the trades or online, which is pretty much the same thing now, about how books in that category are doing. What are the trends in it? You know, and you mentioned, the Dresden Files, and you mentioned some others that are popular and in this category, because it is a category, it's a subgenre, but it's a popular one. And say how you fit in with it, what you do that's the same but different, and what you do that's different from anybody else, but it's still in the same genre. You know, Harry Dresden in the Dresden Files is a wizard, but he's basically human. There are non-human beings in the book. It would have been a very different book if a non-human being had been the lead character and the detective. Completely different. But, you know, maybe your paranormal investigator is paranormal and not just able to tap into it, but has paranormal powers. You want to make that clear, that this is not an average person who encounters the paranormal, but this is somebody who has the abilities and uses that in the real world to accomplish her goals. Something like that. And I'm obviously winging it here, but that's the kind of thing that you want to have in there. And then you talk about how these books are selling, how they're selling short-term, long-term. You want to talk about the spillover between the adult novels and the young adult novels, because a lot of young adult novels are in this area, and a lot of adults read them, like the Harry Potter stories. And while it's not exactly paranormal, but the mine's gone blank. I got a Harry Potter poster staring at me, so I don't have it right in front of me. The trilogy by with Katniss Everdeen.
The Hunger Games.
Hunger Games. Thank you. Yeah. So, you know, you position it in the marketplace compared to other books that have been successful, and you talk about the size of the market and the size of the book sales, and you can find this information online. This is not highly secret. You can go on Amazon and see where the book ranks and how many books have sold through Amazon, and they sell about 80% of all the books that are sold. So, you know, the information you can glean off of Amazon fairly easily is would be very helpful. But the point is, you want to say, here is what the market is first, and here's why my book fits into that market second, and here's what I can do to penetrate that market. In other words, there's a for the past decade, I guess, agents and publishers have been saying, we don't want to talk to you unless you've got a strong platform. You know, platform is the number of people who follow you on social media. And I've talked before about how I don't think the platform is really a good gauge of how successful you are, because most of the people who are following you, I mean, I get half a dozen requests a day for people to follow me. I say, sure. I don't know who they are. They have no, I've never met them. I've never talked to them. I don't know them. I still say yes. And, you know, when I ask people to be, if I can follow them, most of them say yes. And there's no commitment there. There's no buy-in. There's no skin in the game. I like to create a virtual platform using Facebook groups and LinkedIn groups that are focused on topical issues. And let me briefly tell you the power of this. And those who've heard it before, please bear with me. I'll make it short. Before I made a presentation on this last September, I did a quick search on Facebook for groups that wrote about or read about murder mysteries. That was the topic, murder mysteries. And there were more than 110 groups. And they were not ordered in any particular way. There were just 110 groups. Maybe it was in the order that they were created initially. I don't know. But I took the first 10, just the first 10, and added it up because they show you on there how many people are members. And those 10 groups generated 38,900 people who had signed up because they wanted to talk about murder mysteries and to learn about murder mysteries and share their own information about murder mysteries. And people that are passionate about that probably belong to more than one. So I said, look, let's cut the number in half. Let's say 20,000. In a typical promotion on the internet, 0.5% is considered a good success. Well, if you get 20,000 targets, 0.5% is 100. So if you did a promotion a month and sold 100 books a month, you'd be doing pretty good. I mean, from that one thing, there are rules you have to follow, because you can't directly promote yourself, and you can't have links to Amazon on most of these groups. They try to avoid spammers, so they discourage those kinds of links. But still, there are workarounds that you can use. So when you're talking about your platform, say I've got 7,200 followers on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and Reddit, or whatever, but I also am in these groups that focus on exactly what my book is about, and there are 72,000 members of those groups. And I'm a member, they recognize my name, I post there frequently, and I can go on there and say, I've got a new book out, check it out, and people will do that. And we're going to get more sales because they know who I am, they have a sense of who I am. Probably I've told them for months or years, I've been working on this book so that when I'm ready to announce it, there's a group of people there, maybe not a high percentage, but if you got 75,000 people, then you're doing all right. And actually 75,000 was a low ball. For one client I had, a book on preventing or overcoming drug addiction. I ghost wrote the book and then got to promote it. The groups I had more than 250,000 members total. That's a huge audience. One of them had 75,000 all by themselves. You get in with that kind of a group and you're going to be able to sell a lot of books that way. So when you're talking about your marketing ability, the first thing you want to do is talk about your platform and your virtual platform, and say, I've got a platform, but I also have a virtual platform, and there's where I think I really would be successful. And then you talk about that. Other things that you want to include in there is, okay, here's what I can do. Here's what I'm going to be able to do to help sell this book. For instance, me personally, I'm frequently interviewed on radio interviews and podcasts. And one of the things I try to specialize in doing is linking my clients to radio interviews and podcasts that are interested in the kind of books they write. Because it's easy, if they write the kind of book they're looking for, it's easy to get them a booking, and then you go there. And then, so you go on a podcast and, maybe there's 5,000 people who are listening to it. Well, that's nice. But you get the URL when it's posted online, and then you put it out through social media to all those, 75,000 or 250,000 people in your virtual platform and things like that. You put it on your website and everything else, and a lot more people are going to see it, and they're going to be motivated to act because of it. So getting on a radio interview or podcast is the first step, not the last step. It's a necessary first step. But if you have experience in doing it, then say so. If you've spoken as an author, at conferences, say so. Last, almost a year ago today, I think it was 29th of February last year, Henderson Writers Group put on a one-day conference on writing diverse, for diverse audiences and writing diverse characters. And Sherry was on a panel of, I think, 5 authors who've done that. And because her book deals with, the African culture, the native African culture, that's a great kudos. So she's, in her market summary, she should mention that I was asked to be and was a guest speaker on this platform on this subject because of my expertise in writing in this community and the fact that people who put it together were familiar with my writing and knew that I successfully did this or that or the other. She may or may not want to mention that she's a professor, because in some contexts that might be very helpful. And I think in her book, it probably would be. In other contexts, it wouldn't really mean anything because you're not writing about that. I used to be a professor of public relations and marketing at a number of colleges and universities as an adjunct professor. I also taught writing, but this was both a long time ago and not relevant because I'm not writing books on public relations and marketing right now. So, but when I do, I'll mention that I've taught at UNLV in marketing when I'm talking about, how to market your book. And that's a book I hope to get out in the next year or so. Anyway, so you want to talk about, okay, you've talked about the market and you've talked about how you can reach that market. And then you talk about, what you're prepared to do to reach that market and what special skills or gifts you have to approach it. Now, one of the things I've done, which I think all my clients benefit from, because I say, look, be sure to mention this, is I bought a directory last summer of 610 podcasts that are looking for writers as speakers. I have bought a list of 750 to 1,000 radio interview programs that are looking for guests. And I use these in pitching my clients so that they can get these interviews. So if I was saying for my book, I've done a lot of interviews. I have these directories. I bought these media lists. I have these directories, and I know how to pitch and get success. I've done it for my clients. I can do it for myself. So people will say, yeah, that's cool. And just to give you an example, let's see, here it is. I just happened to get an email today. I was going to mention it earlier, but I didn't want to steal Valerie's thunder because she earned all the credit she got. But I got a note from Dan Janelle, who's a man I buy media list from. And he says, Ned, I'd like to invite you to be a guest on my new podcast, Write Your Own Book in a Flash with Dan Janelle, which is named one of the top 50 podcasts for thought leaders by thinkers360.com. My podcast is also one of the relatively few podcasts selected to be available on Audible, which is owned by Amazon. Then he gives me samples of the questions that we're going to do. And of course, I immediately told him, said, not just yes, but hell yes. When do we start? When do you want me, where do you want me to be with? So, but again, that's something that I don't have a book out there right now that I'm ready to promote. But when I have that book coming out in May, you can best believe I'm going to be burning up the lines trying to get, my COVID diaries out there. I just got a flash says that my internet linkage is unstable and then it went away.
You're fine. We hear you now. You froze for half a second. You're fine now.
Okay. All right. Great. Okay. If you see anything, let me know. So you want to talk about what particular resources, assets, gifts, and abilities you have that you can then present and say, this is what I can do for you to sell this book. Because quite honestly, unless your name is Stephen King or John Grisham or, Tom Clancy, who he's been dead for years, but he keeps turning out books every year. So, I mean, he really understands marketing. I mean, don't let a little thing like death get in the way. These people, they don't need the marketing. Their books are going to sell 1 million or 2 million anyway. But the publishers know that if we put money into promoting this book, instead of 2 million, it'll sell 5 million. So we'll both be a lot more successful. So they know what they're doing, but they used to reserve some money for the mid-list people, which is what we all are. After you've gotten the first New York Times bestseller and been on the bestseller list 14 weeks, then you're no longer in the mid-list, but you're here with us right now. You know, they want you to market your book. They want you to market your book. It wasn't always that way, but it kind of was. The book I mentioned, I sold to Simon & Schuster. Part of what sold it was I had done a complete marketing plan on this, based on in Las Vegas, how we would sell it through the casinos to tens of thousands of people. How we would do a deluxe edition that the casinos could buy in bulk and put as a room favor along with the mints on the pillow, so that people come in and say, oh, how to play smart and win at a casino. They know that, you know, they don't build those casinos so people can win, but if they want to maintain the illusion that people can win. That's why they have the noise with all the coins dropping into the till, even though they don't have coins anymore, but you still hear the noise. So anyway, you want to tell them what you can do specifically that will help you sell this book, and you're committed to marketing it and getting it out there and stuff like that. And if you have an agent, then your agent will negotiate on your behalf to say, like, if we're going to do a book tour, hey, at least cover the expenses, not your time, but the expenses, or something like that. And you may get it, you may not. It depends on how highly rated the book is and how big your publisher is. And that's a double-edged sword, because the bigger publishers can afford more, but they're also dealing with a lot more authors, and they're still going to be dealing with relatively few of them. Other publishers have very few authors, relatively speaking. I mean, Simon & Schuster is the biggest in the world, I think, right up there anyway, one of the top 5. And my science fiction novel that I'm rewriting now was published by a group called Gateway Press, and I'm sure you've never heard of them. They had been just an ebook publisher, and we became the first paperback edition or printed edition that they actually put out in the marketplace. So we really kind of took them by the hand and helped them walk through the marketing, because they had no idea how to market a book in print. But you want them to be confident, and you want them to say, yeah, this is like, I get it. I get it. This is, you can do these things, and you will do these things. You show an understanding of it, and then go from there. Now, a couple of people here have, and other clients have had me put together this for them in their name. Valerie, I think when we were working together, I put together a plan that you submitted under your name, which was the intent, but I've done it with other people as well. So they come across as being literate in the area of marketing, and the publisher has greater confidence in them because they know how to market. They clearly know how to market a book, because here's a marketing plan that's done and professional. If you're not clear on what this involves, first of all, read Michael Larson's book on book publishing, our book proposals. And again, I put the link on that to Amazon in the chat. Bob, I don't know, do you have that book in stock, or you could get it? It's still in print, I think.
Which one is that again, Ned?
It's the one by Michael Larson and one other person, and it's like the 5th edition of How to Write a Book Proposal. It's the one with the blue cover.
Let's see. We shouldn't have a problem getting a hold of it. If it's not in the store, of course, we could special order it, and we could probably have it within, at the longest, I would think, maybe 7 days.
Okay. Well, if any of you are interested in this book, I would strongly encourage you to support the man who's created and supported this group that we're here meeting today, and go ahead and get it from Barnes & Noble. And his store is the one on West Charleston at Rampart or Fort Apache, depending on which side of the street you're on.
Nat, say the name again so I can type it in the chat.
How to Write a Book Proposal. And it's by Michael Larson and one other person. And we just, yeah, How to Write a Book Proposal, the insider's step-by-step guide to proposals that get you published. Paperback, illustrated, published September 5, 2017 by Michael Larson and Jody Rain, R-E-I-N. And it's an excellent book at $20 here on Prime. I'm looking at it's a hell of a bargain. It's a very useful book, and as I said, I've bought 4 of the 5 editions, and I know exactly where my edition is for this one. It's on the shelf right next to the bed, where I can just roll over, reach out, and pull it out of the bookshelf and read it without ever getting out of bed, which is
Ladies,
kind of my goal in life.
what's the lady's first name? Her last name is Rain. What's the lady's first name?
Just a second. It is
Jody.
Jody.
Rain.
Okay, Jodi, Jody.
Jody.
Rein. Yes. And
Yeah,
as
and
I
I was,
say,
yeah, Ned, I was just checking. So it would be, if anyone wants to get it through the store, it would be a special order. And it is the latest one by Jody and Michael.
yeah, that's the one. Right. Yes, and that's the one that that you should order from Bob. And Bob, if you want to type your contact information or the store's number or anything in there, so people can reach out to you, because believe me, if you're going to be pitching an agent or a publisher, you really want to have read this book first. Trust me on that. His other book on how to be your own literary agent is also very good, but it doesn't really touch on the aspects of this discussion quite as much as the book proposal one does. I like them both and found them very useful and continue to find them very useful, but if you can only get one book, get this one. Okay, so questions?
Actually, I just have one thing I wanted to add as a resource, as a source for writing storytellers. Vogler, what's his name? I'll put it in the chat, but he wrote The Writer's Journey as a parallel to Joseph Campbell's The Hero's Journey, and he also got Joseph Campbell to write the foreword for the book. So, but I'll write it I'll put it in the chat, but it's a very good source, for going along with how to save the cat, writing a novel and everything like that. It's the beats and everything like that, just a bit more spread out specifically for writers. And for those who haven't seen Star Wars.
Okay. Okay, those are the key things I wanted to talk about. Now, one of the reasons I decided to do this today instead of putting it off for a later date, which was my first thought, is the first week in April will be, I think, the 18th annual Las Vegas Writers Conference. It's a virtual conference. And as a result, instead of, we used to charge like $500 for the 3-day conference, which was a good price. It's now $99 if you're a member of the Henderson Writers Group, and $149 if you're not a member. But since membership costs $50, you might as well join and get the other member benefits and then get the lower rate for the conference. It's same dollar amount. There will be publishers and agents there who are looking to meet with writers, and we will schedule time for you to meet with them. It's kind of like speed dating, it's speed pitching, but you get a period of time and they're there paying attention to you. It's on Zoom, but it's going to be one-on-one with you and them. And, if you want to be pitching somebody like that, you really want to be at this conference. And, you can go to the Henderson Writers Group page on Facebook, or you can go to the Henderson Writers Group webpage, which is hendersonwritersgroup.com, and there'll be a link to the conference. I strongly recommend it. This is a superb program. Tanya Todd has pulled together an incredible faculty, and it's well worth checking out, because you'll learn a lot about writing and about marketing and publishing your books, and you'll have a chance to meet other writers who are in your position and trade notes and stuff like that. And you'll also meet agents and publishers who are there specifically. Most of them give talks too, but they're there specifically so that they can listen to pitches, because they're looking for clients. They're looking for authors who they can represent or publish. So, if you got a book that's ready to go or getting close to being ready to go, you want to talk to them. This is the one time when you can actually pitch them and the book's not quite finished. I still don't recommend it, but if they're say, hey, I'm going to have it finished by June, and they said, well, send me sample chapters. Sherry?
Yeah, just to piggyback on that, I went to it last year virtually again because the pandemic had just started, and so it wasn't going to be virtual. But then they had to go virtual for that reason, and I thought it was really great. And then I've been to a couple of other virtual conferences. I won't say what they are, but they all have something to offer, but the other two that I went to were more expensive and they were not nearly as good as the Las Vegas Writers Conference. They had a lot of technical glitches that the Las Vegas Writers Conference didn't have. They made promises about things that they didn't deliver on. And our conference, the Las Vegas Writers Conference, it's very on the up and up. Everything that they say they're going to do, they do. They've got really good technical people on hand so that if something goes wrong technically, they fix it right away. So just, I can say comparatively, and yeah, I'm in HWG, so obviously I want the conference to succeed, but just speaking objectively, and I think I can because I have been to some other ones that were virtual, HWG just does a fantastic job with this conference. And it's well worth the $99. It's worth a lot more actually, but that's all they charge.
Yeah. Last year, I'm on the board, and last year we made a decision 2 weeks from when the conference started that we were going to go virtual instead of in person. And we had literally met every day for 2 weeks doing really technical stuff to try to get it done. Fortunately, we had Wolf O'Rourke on the board, and he's a technical whiz at things like Zoom. So he was there to guide us. When he talks, I can't understand him. I mean, it's not his accent. I just can't understand what he's saying, but he really knows his stuff. And since I've successfully positioned myself as a technical illiterate with the group, nobody asked me to be like, hosting a meeting or doing the, the facilitating. But I just put the link on it, LasVegasWritersConference.com. So it's there on the chat. And again, this is a great resource, and anybody anywhere in the country, Leslie, you listen to me, anybody anywhere in the country can come. You don't have to be here in Vegas.
Yeah, I'm listening.
April 8th through 10th of this year, April 8th through 10th. And it's going to be a great experience.
I have something to say about also and in addition to it, Tanya is updating the faculty every few days. I mean, I was on there 3 days ago, Friday, and there was one person up there, and then I was on there today and yet another one. So it's almost like adding every like I said, every few days. But also, I mean, I have decided to attend. I had not intended to attend, but I have decided to attend because there are 2 people on who are on the faculty whom I will want to pitch my screenplay, my script to. And one of them was not there on Friday and was there yesterday. So there are at least 2 reasons for me to pitch that. And it will be my first virtual experience at a writers conference, but not my first one in this kind of arena. But yeah, it's updated every few days, and it's like you just never know who's going to be on there. You might think, no, but then go on there and okay, which is exactly what I did.
Okay, well, that's good. I appreciate that, Valerie. It's going to be a great program. Our keynote speaker is a literary agent, Latoya C. Smith.
Mm-hmm.
And she's the keynote speaker because she knows what she's talking about, and also because she is looking for clients. That's the thing, is any publisher or agent who shows up here is looking for clients. So,
that's what Lauren said. They want to go back to wherever they have come from, or virtually anyway, wherever they are. They want to they want to have something. They want to leave the conference with something from someone. So they need us a bit more than, so they really do need us.
So, yeah, and as I mentioned, all the publishers and all the editors are here. Will be giving talks too. They're part of the faculty. So you'll be able to hear what they think and then pitch them knowing something about what they're looking for. Plus, they're fantastic. A few years ago, we had, I think his name's Peter Moss. Incredible. Donald Moss, yes, thank you. Yeah, I've got like 5 of his books on writing and editing and stuff like that. And he's an excellent writer and really understands his stuff. And if you just want to get a good overview, Donald Moss, M-A-A-S, has a number of books, and those 2 you can get from Bob at Barnes and Noble. And Sherry, you had your hand up, or there?
Yeah, I just wanted to share something because I'm involved in the querying process, and I can say that if you meet an agent at a conference and they ask you to send some pages, then they will tend to, not 100% of the time, but in my experience, they've tended to respond more quickly and to respond, period. When I just kind of cold query somebody, some of them respond, but a lot of them don't. But if you're able to put in your subject line, LVWC, Las Vegas Writers Conference requested material, then that gets their attention really well, it seems.
That's important. If they've requested information, you put on the subject line requested material and where they requested it from. That's very important because these people are inundated with stuff, and they probably have somebody who's sorting for them, a first reader or a clerical or something. And if they see that subject line requested material, they know, okay, either this writer's a liar and he will not get very far at all, or this writer actually spoke to my agent or my publisher and they wanted it, so I'm going to give it to them. So that's just really, really important. Along with whatever they ask for, you give them, but let them know that that's what it is. Writing the breakout novel, yes, and also there's he's got the writing the breakout novel workbook, where you can read the one book and then actually, follow through the steps. But he's got other books too, and they're all excellent. So by all means, and he's very accessible. I was planning to pitch him. I wound up with some health issues and couldn't attend the conference the year he was there. But he was very gracious. We traded 3 or 4 emails. He actually responded to me. So I'm very impressed with him, and he really understands what he's talking about. And I think because he's a writer as well as an agent, he's a better agent because he knows what it's like to be a writer. Not all agents came out of the writing world. Some of them just came out of the mailroom. Okay, let's see, there's 2 things here. Okay, all right. Okay, questions. Now is the time for questions. We've basically finished up the presentation.
Okay, so that was the marketing assessment.
Yeah.
So basically your marketing assessment is your marketing plan and what you've been able to find out about where this book would fit in the industry.
Exactly.
And also what audience you can bring or what you're going to be doing to help forward movement in the book.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Here's the market, here's the niche, here's the sales record of the books that are competitors in the niche, and here's what I can do to help bring this to the attention of readers.
Okay.
So those are the key elements there. If you got that and you're believable, then that's a huge leg up. I found. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask the difference between the marketing and the brand. Is there much difference between the 2?
Brand is a kind of marketing, branding. If you don't have a recognized brand, don't say anything about it. And
Okay.
if you've written 3 books that have sold out their first press run, then tell them. But if you've got haven't done that, then don't mention it. You don't want to do anything that's going to sabotage you. Everybody's got to start. So if you haven't done it, that's not an issue. But if you have, then sure, go ahead and talk about it.
Yeah, I was confused about talking about a brand when you're marketing, that kind of thing.
Okay.
I mean, how does that?
That's getting really into the weeds of marketing, and it won't apply until you've got like the 3rd book out,
Yeah.
the series. And then you say, well, I've established a brand with book 1 and book 2. People have developed fan support for this character, and you say that very much like the Hunger Games trilogy, we're building on this, and people are coming along and new people are joining in, but we're still bringing in new ones, and you can benefit from that. Otherwise, branding, it's more important to self-publish books. When people write a series of books, like Paul Atreides, former president of Henderson Writers Group, writes these paranormal related books, and he has the titles all look similar and the covers all look similar, and he's created a brand image, and people see that and they say, oh yeah, I've read that other book by Paul, I want to do it. Donald Riggio has written a series of 3 novels that basically span the whole history of the rock and roll era. And he's now writing the 4th one to bring it up to the present day. And his symbol, his graphic symbol, which is part of his brand, is that kind of curly Q circle that used to stick in a 45 RPM record so you could play it on a spindle.
Oh, yeah.
And so, and he's got hats with that on and shirts with that on.
The medallion.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
So he's
the medallion.
Yeah, and so he succeeded in branding it, but he had to have success with the first 3 books before he could have a reason to brand it. But when the 3rd book came out last year, and then he's working on a new one, he's gone into branding and he's done a good job of it because he's got something to brand. And I mentioned this just as an aside. I used to be the president of an advertising marketing agency here in town called Brand. And I mean, so I dealt a lot with brand, not too long ago. And brand is great and powerful if you've got one, or you want to change one, you want to modify your brand, or, because you're shifting. I took one company that had been a $1 billion company in the area of document management, and it was paper. And then they shifted over to content management, and we had to rebrand the whole company because it was people saw it as a totally different area rather than just I've electronicized what we've been doing for decades. And we were very successful, but we had to do very specific kind of things. In fact, I won a national award, one of those you won't see in my writing bio because it doesn't have anything to do with my writing, but we used market research to create news about this rebranding. And we got huge coverage, and it was very, very successful. But they had something that had a brand, and they wanted to shift the brand. Other companies come along and they want to create a brand. And like, just as an example, Tesla as the car company. Well, Tesla was kind of like the competitor, almost a blood brother, but bitter enemy as well of Edison. One favored direct current, I think that was Edison, and the other favored alternating current, and that was Tesla. Well, alternating current won, but Edison won the marketing business. Well, Elon Musk comes along and, would you buy a car named Musk? I wouldn't. But Tesla, it sounds, futuristic and electric, and okay, it's an electric car. And I mean, it's a perfect brand for that. And they created it, but that was very smart of them to do it. Richard Branson did, Virgin Airlines, and now he's,
everything is Virgin.
The Hard Rock Hotel is going to be the Virgin Hotel now. And
Yeah.
they've even got spaceships now. It's going to be Virgin spaceships.
Yes. And the red color going all the way through.
So, you know, somebody, but he had a success with the airline, which was basically a budget airline between Britain and America. Basically, get you to America cheap, get you home cheap.
I have a question, Ned, that's in loop with branding. If you start out, what if you start out? Well, I wanted to do the same thing, except, and I still do. When you start out with brand colors, you know, every like Joe does with the same color theme on all the covers of your book. Your book covers may be slightly different, but the same colors, and so therefore you're building up how to where, like you said, people recognize, oh, I've seen those colors. Oh, I have, you know, that, and so I read that.
Yeah. Okay. We've mentioned a number of times the Dresden Files books, and all their covers look the same but different. The dark covers, they got a picture of this guy in a trench coat with some magical doohickey, but they're all different. But you can tell right away that they're part of the Dresden Files, and you know, that's a very popular series. And you know, typically when people read a new book, they want to go back and read all of his old books. And so it's been a very good series for him, and really has set the stage for a lot of the paranormal investigation kind of things. Yeah, that's good. In the marketing business, we call that a graphic standard, where you say, okay, we're going to use this typeface, we're going to use this color scheme, this. Hospital Corporation America is the largest hospital company in the world, and back in the 80s, when they had just really emerged as the big one, they decided they wanted to rebrand themselves. And so they paid some New York agency $75,000 to come up with HCA in Helvetica Bold with PMS 204, which is kind of a reddish brown.
Ew. Okay.
And I went the head of their PR marketing department was a good friend of mine. We'd worked together before, and we later became business partners. But I told him, Frank, $75,000 for this, I would have given it to you for 25 grand.
Those colors in medical, it's just like,
Yeah.
is that a good thing? Is it a good thing to do if you're writing a series, as you know, if like Elizabeth, who's writing the paranormal, as to establish a series? Is it a good thing to do that kind of
It
thing?
doesn't hurt to plan for a series, but the first book's got to stand on its own, and the second and the third have to stand on their own. After that, you can start. I mean, it still should stand on their own, but it becomes less and less important because, you know, people get, you know, they're more familiar with it. But if you look, all the Tom Clancy books going all the way back use the same typeface for his name.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So I mean, starting. Yes, it has to stand alone and you know it's going to be a series because you're the writer and you know it is. Isn't it to get the readership, the reader familiar with, you know, what the forthcoming books may look like?
Yes. And in this case, he branded himself, or his publisher or whatever, branded himself, not the lead character. Because his second book, which was Red Storm Rising, which a lot of people think might have been his best book, and I'm one of those, it didn't have Jack Ryan in it at all. It was totally different. But it was the same kind of techno thriller kind of thing. It was just like, you know, World War III being fought non-nuclear in, you know, Europe and in the North Atlantic.
But it was this bold-face type name.
Yes, and that's the brand. Nice. And that's it. Now, a little aside on Tom Clancy, he tried to sell Hunt for Red October to every publisher that was sitting still, and some that were running away from him pretty fast. And he could not get it sold. And then he took it to the Naval Institute Press, which had only ever published nonfiction. This is like their book magazine, Naval Proceedings, is like the trade journal for naval officers in America. And all their books were, I've got a lot of their books because I'm fascinated with the stuff, but about ships or weapons or battles or something like that. He went to them and persuaded them that they should publish his book. And they said, all right, we'll give it a try. And it was going pretty much nowhere because they weren't set up to market novels or distribute novels. Until one day, this guy, he lived in Washington. I don't know, you may have heard of him. Reagan? Yeah, Reagan. He got up and said he got that book for Christmas and he really loved it. And the next thing you know, the book took off. Well, yeah,
and with Alec Baldwin and Bond. He was Sean Connery.
Yeah. Okay, but that came later. I mean, the book came 6-7 years before the movie. And it wasn't going anywhere. And then it took off when Reagan endorsed it. I never heard of it. I got it for Christmas from my parents because they heard that Reagan liked it. And they said, oh, I bet Ned likes this because he likes that kind of stuff. And I was like, who's Tom Clancy and what's this book? And it sat on the shelf for about 4 months. And then I read it and then I read it again. And I was hooked. But yeah, he branded his name because he didn't always write in that environment. Oddly enough, when he wrote his second book on the Jack Ryan series, the Naval Institute Press tried to sue him because they said they had the rights to Jack Ryan. They'd published it. And they'd never dealt with fiction. They really didn't know what they were doing, and they didn't have a chance, and they lost. But because he went to Putnam, which saw, okay, this guy's going to be a perennial bestseller, so let's go with him. And the last book contract he signed that I was aware of before he died was, I think he got $65 million. And this was like 10, 15 years before the Obamas got $65 million for several books. He got it for one book.
No.
And then he went out and bought the Baltimore Orioles, I think. I mean, I had to do something with his money. But
Can a cover make or break a book?
yes.
That was my next question. Yeah.
Yes, a cover can make or break a book. And in that a bad cover will kill it dead. A bad cover will just make it non-saleable. And bad covers don't have to be ugly or strange. They just have to kind of like fade into the background. I see these books that are literary books that have covers that are all pastels. And it's like, I can't even see what it is. It's just like a kaleidoscope of pastels. It's like, it doesn't say anything. A good cover will captivate the person enough to pick up the book, open it up, read some of the endorsements that are in the front, look at the back cover, see this and say, yeah, I'm going to go buy it and go up to the bookstand and pay for it.
And please, by all means, get a professional or someone who really knows what the hell they're doing for your cover.
Yes,
Yeah.
I'll tell you an interesting to me story about that. And this was something Andres Fregosa and I are working on. Is Andres still here? You still here, Andy?
Nope. No, we bounced about 20 minutes ago.
Okay, fair enough. I had a client and I brought him in to help. And the first thing we did, this client, his book had been published by the University of Nevada, Reno Press. And it was about a nuclear disaster at the test site where an underground explosion vented to the surface and exposed 86 people who then proceeded to die, as you would expect. Some right away, some not right away, but a bunch of them did. Anyway, the cover of the book, it was in black and white, it wasn't in color, and it showed us this pillar of cloud just rising up through there. And there was nothing about it. I mean, if you were reading Exodus, you might say, oh, well, there's the pillar of smoke that we follow in the daytime and pillar of fire at night. But we got the book rights back. They didn't know how to market the book. They said they thought it was doing really good and they'd sold 232 copies in a year and a half. And I'm sorry, but that's not going to pay the rent. So we said, no, we'll get back, and they gave it to us. And we redesigned the cover. And I sketched it out like on a napkin or something, and then Andres took it and actually made it work, and he did a great job on it. But basically the same photo, but in color and showing a different part of it, because this column rose like this, and then at the top, it folded over in one direction, and in profile, it looked just like a wolf with the fangs and
Oh, no.
just really dramatic. And this is something, this was a nuclear test where people died. It was the only nuclear test ever that had a name that was deadly in itself. It was Baneberry, and Baneberry is a poison berry.
Oh,
All the other ones had like, we're going to test New Hope tomorrow. Puppy dogs and flowers. They just came up with these bizarre names. This one was Baneberry test, and here was this 8,000 feet up, this wolf's head looking like he's ready to attack. And the symbolism was just beautiful. And the book has done so much better with that new cover. So much better.
Talking about covers in the store, in the bookstore as well. Something for all of you to just keep in the back of your mind. Do we have anyone in the group that's worked in a bookstore before like me?
My wife has. She worked in Barnes & Noble for years.
Yeah. One of the things that I was taught many, many, many years ago was when I was working with a face out. Books that are face outs, do you realize, I don't know if many of you realize, but we try not to face out a paperback. We will do our best to face out a hardcover. Can all of you understand the reason why we would favor a hardcover over a paperback?
Oh, I know. No, anybody?
Price of the book? I don't know. Would you get more on a hardback than you would a paperback?
That's one reason. Another is many times when you work with paperbacks and you try to face them out, they have no support. And what happens to the book?
Falls on the floor.
It doesn't just fall on the floor. Those of you who have been in a bookstore and you see paperbacks that are faced out with no support, they start bending. And when they start bending more and more,
Yeah, that's true.
we can't sell them.
Yeah.
So it's just something for all of you to think about, because we've had a lot of authors, a lot of writers who favor the paperback over the hardcover.
Ned, tell them the importance of having your name and on the spine of your book along with the title.
Well, again, people buy books or shop for books for two reasons. Either it's a title that they've heard of, or an author that they have heard of or know. So there, if you don't have your name on the spine, you've just lost half your potential sales. Because the people who come looking for you, they don't remember the title of the book, but they remember you. If your name's not there, they're not going to see it. They're going to skim right on by. And when you think about all the books that you find in a bookstore nowadays, in Barnes & Noble, I don't know how many tens of thousands of books you have, but it's a lot. I mean, I love it. But, how do you find it? Well, fortunately, there are categories, and you go to the categories, and then there's two other divisions. One are the new books recently released, and they're all alphabetical by author. And then you have the books that have been out a while, alphabetical by author. So if I want to read a book by David Weber, who's a science fiction writer I very much enjoy, I'm going to go to the back and see if there's any David Weber books there that I don't have. And I'll also check the new books to see if one's come out that I hadn't heard about and pick it up. And I wind up getting a lot of hardcovers because they get prominent place on the front row, right there as you're walking through. There's the science fiction, and there's these, the new books, the hardcover books, and they just jump right out at you. You see the cover, and all the covers look the same but different. They all have that same branding image for, at least he's got several series of books, and each series has its own kind of look. But the one I'm looking for is, you know, I know what the look is, and I can spot it a half mile away. But if I'm looking in paperback, I'm looking at the author name, and if it's not there, how do I know it's the book I'm looking for? So is
I
that
know
you're thinking about?
Angela.
Yeah. I know there was something you said before, and I wrote it down somewhere, but I don't have it accessible right this minute. We were talking about before about pre-sales for the books and then actual sales on like Amazon when they order them, but something about to some ways better than the other. I don't remember what exactly was said about that. Does anybody remember about pre-selling people who want that book? Like, what would be a good number if you have people that want to purchase the book ahead of time? What would be like a significant number of people that you would think was significant for pre-orders? How many would you think? Or
I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
A good friend of mine, Joylyn Ross, who's, by the way, is going to be doing the program in April, the end of April. She's going to be doing a program, and she really knows her stuff. So, you know, by all means, be there. We haven't done a guest before, but this is like our first anniversary of doing these programs, and I wanted to bring her in, and Bob agreed, so she'll be our guest speaker in April. But she launched a book pre-sale a year before it was ready to go, and the book sold for $20 a piece, and she sold 1,000 of them pre-launch. Now, this is a self-published book, so all the printing expenses and everything were paid for with other people's money. You know, people trusted her, they bought from her, and you know, and it's a very good book on the business side of writing, kind of some of the things we're talking about here. It's not, doesn't have long chapters, got little snippets here and there you can pull out and read. You don't have to read it sequentially. I got a copy and brought it home. My wife immediately grabbed it and wouldn't let it go until she finished it. And when I got it back, it was all highlighted and dog-eared and everything. And then I added to it because there was other stuff I wanted to mark up too. But she sold it a year in advance. She had a built-in audience, and she sold it starting a year in advance, and she sold 1,000 copies at $20 a piece. And that's good. Typically, people who are doing this will do it 60 days or 6 months or 3 months or even 1 month before. But I don't like to do the 1 month. I like to do the longer period of time. And you know, if your book is ready to go 6 months out, if it's got the kind of book that would appeal, it's there. And I've noticed that on Amazon, I'll you know, I'll be on Amazon and they'll pop up a little book that we think you'd like to see, and maybe it's in an email or maybe it's on the page, and I'll say, okay, I want to look at it, and it's available for a pre-sale, and they said it'll be shipping on May 1st or whatever. And so they're doing it too. They're selling it in advance, getting the commitments. There was a book, I was just reading about this today. There was a book written that became an Amazon bestseller pre-publication, and then Amazon canceled it and refunded everybody's money because it was on a politically sensitive topic, and they become very woke, and they didn't want to have anything that didn't go with the party line. That's a lot of money for them to throw away, but I guess the biggest company on earth can afford to do that. Not so good for the author, who thought he'd had all these sales, and then they pulled the plug on him. But
that's what we do as well, Ned.
Yeah.
And we kind of got that with the Chosen Pen Publishing.
mm-hmm.
Our book, we do the pre-launch.
Yeah.
And then we've been out there now for about, I'd say 7-8 months.
Yeah.
And we pre-sell our books, and we get the money, just like you said, the $20.
Mm-hmm.
And we still don't have the books in our hand.
Yeah.
And we became international best-selling.
Yeah. Well, if you're going to pre-sell the book and you really want it to work, you have to plan ahead. For instance, Joy Lynn, when she offered her book, the first thing she did was she had a reception for a cover reveal, and she had taken the cover and blown it up big, and she had it at one of her annual conferences, and there were probably, I don't know, 100 people there, And I'd be surprised if you know, she didn't sell 50 or 70 books pre-sale right then. It's a good place to start. It's a great way to start.
Then we've had the summits in between, you know.
Yeah. And so, you know, and during the whole year she was pre-selling it, she kept promoting it on her website and in her emails. And she's a very aggressive promoter and marketer in the best sense of the word. She produces these very detailed, long blogs on a daily basis that really are enlightening. And I don't know how she has time to do it. Either she doesn't sleep or, you know, I don't know. Maybe she just psychically transmits it into the computer. But, you know, so she's got a big fan base, a lot of followers, a lot of people who she's helped over the years to succeed at writing. Leslie's one of them, as mentioned, and other people who are here tonight have also worked with her. And it was just, I find it stunning that it was that successful.
Phenomenal.
But she earned it. She earned the success. She you know, it was successful because she earned it. It's not because she did anything spectacularly well. She did everything spectacularly well, and she.
That's what I picked up from her.
Yeah.
To talk about your book all the time. And
Yeah.
every situation, just slip it in there. You don't have to be, you know, just slip it in there and just, you know, keep your book, you know, top of mind. Even in Leslie, as in pre-sale, just, you know, just keep it, you know, just keep mentioning it. I mean, I didn't even know Joey Lynn Ross, and I'm like, okay, I bought her book right after she spoke at Dime Grind. And she autographed it for me. I mean, so
Yeah.
Well, I'm not worried about that. I've got people asking me when it's going to be ready. So I don't know if it's great, but I know that I have people have interest. And I was trying to get an idea based on the amount of input. It's not family, it's other people in the world. So just so you know, it's not like your sister, your brother, whatever, it's the world in general. And I wanted to know, like, I was trying to get an idea, like how many of those numbers would be like a significant number of people. That's what I was trying to get an idea. So that 1,000 is awesome, but anything less than that as a novice would be great.
Okay, I had a client who had a book launch party.
Mm-hmm.
And she lived here in Vegas, but she was from Cleveland, Ohio. And she had a contact list of people, and in Cleveland, she had it there. She invited 300 people, or she invited a lot of people. 300 came. 170 of them bought books from her at $18 a pop. And that's a good way to launch something. And she has two overriding goals in her life, or she did at the time that she was doing this. One, she wanted to go to every major league baseball stadium in North America and watch a game being played there. Bob, take care. Okay, so anyway, so where was I? I'm sorry.
Major League Stadium.
Oh yeah, right. Okay, yeah. One was Major League Stadium, and the other was she wanted to go travel the world. So she had the successful thing, and the next thing I know, I'm getting an email with a photograph attached. She'd gone to Iceland in June, and she was there in Iceland in June. This is summer, and she's wearing a parka. Like, why would anybody want to go to Iceland, even in June? But she wanted to. And she did, and that was her way of celebrating her success. But the main thing is that she had an event with people who had a tie to, basically her father had been a baseball coach and turned out to be a mentor to just an awful lot of people, changed their lives. And the book was about his wisdom, his insights that he shared with people. So a lot of people who had, you know, respected him showed up, and more than half of them bought the book. And that's anybody who's done a book signing knows that if you can sell to half the people in the room, you're doing very well. Indeed.
My book launch, I sold to half the people in the room.
Right, that's good. That's good.
My virtual book launch, I sold to half the people in the room.
There you go.
3 books, you know, nine. I had this. I said it one night. signing all 9, 3, 2, a set of 3 was all 3 of my books. And I thanked each and every one of them. So yeah, I did my book launch. Half the people in the room were 3 people.
Right.
But any number of people, I think, who's asking for your book, who's ready to have your book and everything like that, just, I mean, you
Yeah.
got your springboard that you're jumping out with. So
Here's the key. Here's the key for pre-selling. You won't sell any books without marketing.
That's right.
You can't pre-sell a book unless people know it's coming and want it and know where to get
That's
it
the
by
hype.
a pre-sale. That's
Yeah.
it. So, when Amazon puts a book up for pre-sale, and unfortunately, a lot of the books that I'm interested in that they carry are up for pre-sale. And I'm frustrated because I want it right now. I mean, one thing I like about Prime is I ordered a book and the next day I've got the book.
6 weeks. Pre-sale, 6 weeks.
Well, 6 weeks, 6 months. I've never heard of anybody except Joy Lynn that sold it a year in advance.
All right.
She's got a tremendous platform of people that would go along with her on this. So that worked for her in her favor. But
and what has helped us is the radio broadcast. We do that, and with the summits. So we do that with all of our books.
Yeah.
And it really helps.
Wonderful. Thank you all for all your information. I
Okay.
appreciate you.
All right. Well, let me just say that we've gone 10 minutes over. I'll stick around if people have more questions, but if you feel like you need to leave, that's okay. Appreciate you all coming here. And again, Las Vegas Writers Conference, 8 through 10 April. Be there. It will make a big difference. You will get a chance to pitch to publishers and agents. And if you're ready, I know people. I had a client who got his book published because he met a publisher's acquisition agent at the Las Vegas Writers Conference. And she was from New York, but she was there for the conference. He met her in the bar and she said, "What are you writing?" And he told her, and she said, "Send me a copy." It was that, I mean, it wasn't like a formal meeting. They were in a bar. And so he did it. And she loved the book. The other people, not everybody else in the publishing house loved it. So they didn't buy that book. But she says, "Do you have anything else?" And he says, "Yeah," and sent it to her. And they bought that book and published it. And published it September a year ago. So, I can't stress too much what a bargain this is. First of all, as I said, you're getting the same program material that you got for $500 a couple years ago for $99. And if you're not a member of Henderson Writers Group, members can go to read and critique sessions and read. Non-members are welcome, but they can only critique, they can't read. We want to hear your opinions about the work, but you want to read it yourself. We do an annual anthology. You can submit for the anthology, but only if you're a member. We have 2 writing contests during the year just for our members, one at Halloween and one at Christmas time. And these are like, super short stories thematically. And the winner of each of those gets in our anthology too. So, you get in. The rest of the anthology is jury. There's writers up in Utah who review it and evaluate all the submissions, and just, and then we have a cutoff line. And if you get this many points, you get in, and if you get below that, you don't. But there are a lot of benefits to being in Henderson Writers Group, and $50 a year is really not much. And if you go to the conference, then join and then go for $99 instead of paying $149. You might as well get the membership out of it too. But even at $149, it's a tremendous bargain, and you're going to be interacting with a lot of writers who are successfully published and people who have won incredible awards, recognition for their writing. I'm going to pick on Sherry again. She won some kind of a fellowship to go to a writer's retreat in the south of France. COVID got in the way, but I hope it'll come back and she'll be able to go. But I mean, this is an international competition. That's a remarkable thing. And certainly when she's pitching her book, she's going to want to mention that, because that's a hell of a credential.
It is definitely.
So, but again, if you look at the agenda on the webpage, you'll see all the things that you can do, the faculties, the workshops. We have a master class. It's separate. It's more money. I think it's $50, but it's a half-day course by a real expert, and it's just focused on that one thing. And that's optional, but it's an option you all consider. We have pitch sessions, blue pencil reviews, where people submit a few pages, and an editor or an agent will mark it up and tell you what they think of it. And first page reads. There's a lot of different things that you can do to connect with the publishing industry. So this is something that you really ought to consider attending. And as I said, it's April 8th through 10th, and the website is LasVegasWritersConference.com. So, anybody else have questions? Thank you, Sherry. Glad you could join us.
No, thank you, Ned.
Bye.
Take care. And
Have a good evening.
a week
Thank
from
you. Have a
Monday,
nice
I'm going to be doing at Henderson Writers Group. I'm going to be doing the Selling Bio program. If you want to learn about that and want to get to it sooner, you can come to that. I'll be doing again the end of the March here, but I'll be doing it. I was asked to do it for the Henderson Writers Group, so I'm going to be doing that. And again, anybody can attend. It's a Zoom. You go to our Facebook group, and there'll be the code number you need to get in, and free, and we welcome you all. So yeah,
That's a week from Monday.
week from Monday.
A week from this coming Monday.
Yes,
Okay.
I believe so.
Wait a minute.
Maybe it's
What-
this Monday.
No, it's this Monday. It's next
Oh, it's next Monday?
Monday.
March 1st? That's
Yeah, I think
Monday.
so. Yeah,
March 1st.
yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Okay,
March
yeah,
1st,
I'm glad you
okay.
caught that, Valerie, because I thought it was still last week. Yeah, it'll be a,
10 minutes late. Yeah, okay.
yeah. A couple of you I know have already attended this because I did this program. The first time I did it was at Joy Lynn's annual writers conference last September. And I know several of you were there. And Tanya Todd, who's our education director at the Henderson Writers Group, was there and attended it. And she said to me, she came to me and said, I want you to do this to help our people get ready for going to the writers conference. So she put me on, we're going to have programs every Monday of the month. And she put me in the first one because she felt that would be the most beneficial and maybe take the most time to work through it and get it down just the way you want it. So I'll be doing it a little differently when I do it here, different environment, different format, but by all means, you can attend both. They're both free and worth every penny you'll ever pay for it.
Thank you, Ned.
You're most welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Have a good night.
I'm glad you could make
Good
it.
night.
Have a
Good night.
evening. Thank
Okay,
you.
Good
we're
night,
gonna end
everybody.
in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Good night.
Good night.